Hello YouTube, welcome to another League of Legends guide. Today we are covering mid lane Veigar.
Know that if the tables were turned, I would show you no mercy!
Veigar is a very bursty champion that has infinite scaling, which means as long as the game keeps continuing, his burst gets higher and higher. He has a very versatile AoE stun, which is great when used offensively or defensively. He's then able to steal objectives like Dragon and Baron, since his Q and W combo does more damage than a smite. Then, when you combine his devastating burst damage and his AoE stun, he has great pick potential. Now, although he can be a very devastating champion when he gets his burst off, he does however have very low mobility, and he's a very squishy champion. Positioning is very important. He's then got a very mediocre early game. Now, it's not completely awful, but he does have to stack up some ability power from his Q, and he does have some very hard matchups. All of his abilities then are skill shot based, and if he can't land his stun, he's usually going to have a hard time landing them. Lastly, he's extremely vulnerable to ganks when he doesn't have a stun available, as he has no way of escaping. All in all, he does have his share of pros and cons, but as long as you can land your stun and your other skill shots, you have the potential to be a very strong champion. For my Masteries, I go 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as my Keystone Mastery. Since he is a bursty champion that combos really well, Thunderlords can add some additional damage in your burst and can sometimes be the difference in if you get a kill. Now in my build, I do like to go for the extra 5% CDR, meaning your cap would be 45%, but you can of course go for the magic penetration as well, as obviously getting through magic resist is also incredible. Having that extra 5% CDR will let you get off just a little bit more Qs and can stack just a little bit easier. For my runes, I go Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, Scaling Cooldown Reduction and Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. I like those 6 glyphs of Scaling Cooldown Reduction for 10% CDR at level 18 because usually we only go for like a Morello Nomicon and either a Zhonya's or an Abyssal, which obviously leaves us only at 30% CDR, so this will give us that extra 10%. For the others, well, Ability Power and Magic Penetration just increases your damage, and since we only get a little bit of Magic Resist, we do want to get that Scaling Health, so we do have a larger health pool, and we're a little tankier in the mid lane. For my Summoners, first we have to grab Flash. He's a very immobile champion, and this will give you a reliable escape. You can then also use Flash to go forward and surprise the enemy team with a stun. For our viable secondary Summoner spells, we have Ghost first. This will help you chase and land an event horizon, and will let you close gaps easier. It then gives you some nice movement speed for kiting or escaping. Now Exhaust is great against all-in assassins like Talon or Zed. In those matchups, you're going to have to take Exhaust just to survive through the lane phase. Last, we have Teleport, and this is great for some nice global pressure. It's then also great just for buying and making it back to the lane so you don't miss CS. Now, you could always take Ignite, but generally that's not necessary on Veigar. He already does so much burst damage as it is, and you don't really need Ignite. Since Veigar is such an immobile champion, I myself prefer having another defensive summoner. Alright, so let's kick off his abilities by starting with his passive, Phenomenal Evil Power. So Veigar gains a stack of Phenomenal Evil whenever he hits an enemy champion with an ability, and 5 stacks whenever he scores a champion takedown. Veigar then gains 1 ability power for every stack of Phenomenal Evil. So this is pretty simple: hit enemies with abilities and kill them. If you are against a melee champion, you're going to be able to drop your W by the minion waves when people want to go into last hit, so they can either miss the last hit or take the damage and give you a stack. Of course, your Q also does hit 2 targets, so if you are last hitting a minion and the enemy champion is behind it, you can hit him at the same time and also gain a stack of this ability. Pretty solid passive, and the longer the game goes on, the stronger it actually is. Now, another way to stack ability power, your Q, Baleful Strike. So, for the passive, killing a unit with Baleful Strike grants 1 stack of Phenomenal Evil, doubled against large minions and monsters. For the active, Veigar unleashes a bolt of dark energy in the target direction, dealing magic damage to the first 2 enemies hit. So this ability is strong, and it is the one we max first. The damage is pretty decent, and the cooldown goes down a little bit every time we put a rank into it, and by doing this, we can use this more often and stack more ability power. Usually you'll want to try to last hit at least 2 or 3 minions every single minion wave, and if you can, get that secondary damage to either last hit a second minion or damage the enemy champion. It's just like using Nasus's Q, and you have to be using it effectively to be a late game threat. Now, your W, Dark Matter. Veigar calls a mass of dark matter to fall from the sky to the target location, which lands after a 1.25 second delay, dealing magic damage to all enemies hit. This then does a ton of damage at between a 100 and 300 base plus 100% AP. So this of course is great for clearing up minion waves, as it is an AoE that does a lot of damage, but the problem with doing that is that you're not gaining ability power by farming with your Q. So generally you do want to be farming with your Q, but if you do have to really clean up a minion wave, then you want to use your W. You can also hit some minions with your W to get them in the kill threshold of your Q, so you can get that ability power. Now in your main combo, this is going to be the first part of it after you land your stun, because it does have a 1.25 second delay and your stun only lasts 1.5 seconds. That's of course with your stun at level 1. So you're going to want to follow this right after the stun and instantly follow up with that Q and R, as it doesn't really matter if they're still stunned or not. Either way, since this is a ton of damage still, we want to max it second right behind our Q. Now finally, the stun that's been mentioned a couple times already, Event Horizon. Veigar forms a cage around the target area, which materializes after a 0.5 second delay and lasts for 3 seconds, knocking down and stunning all enemies who pass through its edges for the first time. The stun is between a 1.5 and 2.5 second duration, based on the rank of the ability. So this is of course a very strong ability, and a well-timed stun can easily win you a game. It's going to take some time getting used to though, because you have to get people to be on the edges when it does materialize, and that of course also has a 0.5 second delay. Now although an increased stun duration is awesome, it's not as good as our Q and W because they do so much damage and are necessary to level up for our high burst combos, so we have to leave this one for last. Make sure you get an early point into it, because even that 1.5 second stun duration is enough to get off our full combo. But let's move on and cover our ultimate, Primordial Burst. Veigar blasts the target enemy champion with primordial energy, dealing them magic damage, and the minimum is between a 175 and 325 base plus 75% AP. Primordial Burst then deals 1.5% increased damage for every 1% of the target's missing health, up to double damage against targets below 33.3% of their maximum health. So that max damage is a whopping 350 to 650 base plus 150% AP. So since this is based off the percentage of targets missing health, this of course is the last part of your combo. It basically acts like an execute. Get them a little bit low and finish them off with this ability. I'm going to leave it like that because we're literally covering our combos in probably a minute. First though is our skill order. In all cases, we want to get our ultimate whenever we can at 6, 11, and 16, and then focus on maxing our Q for its increased damage and lower cooldown. We then start maxing our W as it does a ton of damage, and then finally our E as it is only a stun, and that 1.5 second stun is enough early on in the game. So you'll want to take your stun at either level 3 or 4. If you don't think you're going to need it, then you may as well take your Q at level 3 as well, so you can get a little bit more damage and the cooldown will go down 0.5 seconds. If you feel like you're going to get ganked or you just want to combo with your stun, then of course take it at level 3 instead. It's up to you. For our harassment combo, we first use our Event Horizon to stun the enemy. Then you'll instantly want to cast your Dark Matter under that enemy, and then hit them with your Q, Baleful Strike. You'll also be able to insert auto attacks into this combo to improve the overall damage, but you gotta keep in mind that your Dark Matter does take 1.25 seconds to drop, and your stun is only 1.5 seconds. So for our one-shot combo, we started the same, and we use our Event Horizon to stun the enemy, and then cast our Dark Matter under that enemy. Then instantly hit the enemy with your Baleful Strike and use that Primordial Burst to finish off the enemy. Now, as I did mention, all the way back in 6.9, they made Primordial Burst now deal percent missing health damage, so you want to save that for the end of your combo, always. In the early game, you want to focus on last hitting. You'll want to try and last hit at least 3 minions with your Baleful Strike every minion wave to get your ability power stacking. It's best to use this ability to get either 2 last hits or to also hit the enemy, since you get stacking ability power from your passive as well. Then you want to use your Event Horizon to either harass the enemy with the stun it provides or to save yourself when you are getting ganked, and make sure you keep up wards. Try to keep the minion wave away from your turret. You struggle at last hitting under it early and it can affect your AP stacking. Then finally take Razor Beaks whenever you can as well to get more gold and more ability power. In the mid game, make sure you keep stacking up that ability power with your Baleful Strike and your phenomenal evil power. Only roam when you've shoved your minion wave. You don't want to miss last hits. In teamfights, your goal is to land a solid stun on the enemy team and then delete a high kill priority target. If you've then won that team fight, you'll want to make sure you take an objective like Tower or a Dragon. In fights, be very careful of your positioning as well. You're very immobile, and if you get flanked when your stun is down, you're probably dead. By 20 minutes, you should have somewhere around 175 to 225 ability power stacked if you've had a somewhat decent game. When a late game teamfight breaks out, position yourself behind the front line and poke with your Baleful Strike and Dark Matter. When you see a good opportunity to stun, use your Event Horizon and get it on as many targets as possible. In the teamfight, you'll want to kill the target who does the most damage in the teamfight. Once you have your core items and a bunch of ability power stacked, you can pretty much delete any target you want. If your team has a Fed AD carry, then you may want to use your Event Horizon to stun enemies rushing towards them instead of using it more offensively. Remember, Baleful Strike and Dark Matter combo does more damage than a Smite, so if the enemy is on Dragon or Baron, you can always try to steal it. Let's kick off our first set of hard matchups with Syndra. Now she's a hard matchup for Veigar because of her very long range stun and high burst damage. Veigar is also a very immobile champion, so landing her stun combo on you can be rather easy. All you want to do is stay at a safe distance and farm as much as you can with your Baleful Strike and avoid her stuns. Then there is Annie, and she can zone you early on by sitting on her stun. Play passively and farm with your auto attacks and Baleful Strike, and you'll only want to go for a kill when she's stunned or on very low health. At level 6, play even more careful because she can flash Tibbers you and pretty much just delete you on the spot. Next, we have Xerath, and he's a hard matchup because of his range advantage and his poke. You're not going to have a ton of opportunities to stun him because he'll be too far away from you. Farm as much as you can with your auto attacks and Baleful Strike yet again, and avoid his poke as much as you can. Our second set of hard matchups are more mobile champions, and first we have Katarina because she's got a ton of mobility. She's going to be rather hard to land a stun on, and if you do miss, she can just Shunpo onto you and go for a kill. Play passively and farm your Baleful Strike as much as possible, save your Event Horizon for when she engages on you. Next is Kassadin, and playing against Kassadin is a lot like playing against Katarina. It's going to be hard to get off a good stun, and if you do miss, he's just going to Rift Walk onto you to hop through your stun. Focus on farming with your auto attacks and Baleful Strike again, and save your Event Horizon for when he engages. Then there is Fizz, who is yet again another mobile assassin that can all-in the shit out of you when he is level 6. Focus on stacking up your ability power with your Baleful Strike, and save your stun Event Horizon for when he engages onto you with his Playful and Trickster, because if you miss, he's gonna hop right through. Alright, let's finish this off with our item build, and for our normal start we want to go Doran's Ring, Health Potion, and Warding Totem, but if we instead need more sustain, we can go for the Corrupting Potion and a Warding Totem. For our core build, we go full out AP, grabbing a Morellonomicon, then Rabadon's Death Cap, and a Void Staff. Morellonomicon is great as a first item because we do get 20% CDR, which lets us stack our Q even faster, and of course it also applies Grievous Wounds. Then of course the Rabadon's Death Cap is great for gaining all of that AP, and the Void Staff for getting through any magic resist. Now if we are however in a really hard AP lane, we may need to get the Abyssal Scepter first. Then of course if we are in a hard AD matchup, then we'll want that Arm Guard first. For our boot options, we have the Sork Shoes and the Ionians. I pretty much always get the Sork Shoes since I am taking 10% CDR from my runes. I don't really get Ionians, but if you didn't want to take CDR runes, then Ionian boots would be great. For the rest of the item pool, we first have the Luden's Echo. It's a really great way of adding some extra burst into our combos, and our roaming is a little bit better since we do get 10% movement speed. Zhonya's is then probably the best defensive pickup we can get, as it does add a lot of AP as well, but the Stasis is just super strong as well. If you want to get a higher health pool and apply some slows onto our abilities, we could get the Rylai's Crystal Scepter, but honestly, it's not something I take too often. Guardian Angel is, like always, a fantastic late game item, as it will let you come back to life, and it can be the difference in getting off a burst or not. Banshee's Veil is kind of the same deal. You're really squishy and you don't want to get hit by a CC, so this has the potential of blocking something very important. Then there is the Liandry's if you're against a very high health team, and the Hextech Proto Belt is a decent item as well, but not something I pick up too often. For our normal high AP build, we take our core and then get that Luden's Echo to increase our burst, and the Zhonya's to have a little bit of defensive, yet add more ability power. If everybody in the game wanted to kill us instead, then we would take our core and add both a Zhonya's and a Banshee's Veil. We wouldn't do as much damage since the Banshee's Veil doesn't add any ability power, but if it has the potential to block something very important, then it's definitely worth getting. But that concludes our mid lane AP Veigar build. If you guys enjoyed the guide, please make sure you thumb it up, and if you're new here or really enjoyed it, you could always subscribe. Make sure you visit our website, egamingtv.com, for a list of our guides, and you can also follow us on Twitter where we do our skin giveaways at egaming_TV. We do them at the end of every month. I am also co-hosting a podcast, so if you would like to apply to join that is also in the video description. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching, and I will see you guys in the next champion guide. Peace!
Meditation, my medication. Meditation, my medication. I got a problem. I got a problem. Minimize it with a hit or two, maybe a lick or two, maybe a sip or two, or just hit the booth and do what I do. I don't need a doctor, but they know I'm sick. I just hit the block with the windows tint, then I hit the lot, same parking spot. Shit's all reserved like a dentist.